Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we meticulously unpack groundbreaking research, aiming to give you that shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. Today, we're diving into something pretty fascinating, an intriguing paradox, really, right at the heart of large language models. See, on one hand, we've seen these LLMs, especially the ones using reinforcement learning with verifiable rewards or RLVR, achieve just incredible things. We're talking complex reasoning tasks, advanced math, tricky STEM problems, even quite sophisticated code generation, stuff that, frankly, most people would find incredibly difficult.
That's a really good point. Models like OpenAI's O1 and DeepSeek's R1, they've really pushed the boundaries in those specialized areas. And that RLVR approach has been, well, exceptionally effective, mostly because it relies on these high-quality, objectively verifiable prompts. You get clear, unambiguous feedback, right? And that's absolutely critical for learning those long, intricate reasoning chains.
But then there's this twist, this kind of unsolved puzzle that's been, well, bothering researchers. Despite all these advanced skills, these very same LLMs often really struggle, sometimes quite badly, with what seem like simple logical puzzles. You know, the kind of brain teasers, deduction challenges that, well, humans can often solve just using pure logic. No specialized knowledge needed at all. It's a bit weird, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And it really highlights a gap, perhaps a fundamental one, in how they reason.
Yeah.
The paper we're looking at today calls these puzzle tasks that require purely logical reasoning skills rather than professional knowledge. Puzzles that are often, as they say, easy and even obvious for human. And, up until now, most research on LLMs and puzzles was more about benchmarking, just evaluating them, not really improving them.
Ah, okay, so just testing, not training.
Exactly. What was missing were, well, diverse, scalable, and controllable data sets, and effective training methods designed for these modern LLMs to actually get better at puzzles. Existing data sets, the authors point out, often lack diversity and scalability, covering limited puzzle types and offering little control over generation or difficulty. It suggests these models just haven't had the right kind of, let's say, mental workout for pure logic itself.
And that's precisely where today's deep dive really anchors itself. We're going to introduce you to Enigmata. It's presented as a novel, comprehensive suite designed specifically to, well, boost LLM's puzzle reasoning skills. Think of it less like just another test and more like a dedicated training gym for AI logic.
That's a great analogy. Enigmata aims to be this unified, controllable framework for advancing logical reasoning in LLMs, tackling that puzzle deficit head-on. The authors actually call it the first comprehensive suite tailored for improving LLMs with puzzle reasoning skills, which really signals a shift.
Yeah.
Moving from just testing abilities to actively trying to build them.
And this is some serious work, a big collaboration involving researchers from ByteDance Seed, Fudan University, Tsinghua Nanjing University, and Shanghai Jiaotong University. So our mission today is pretty clear. We're going to unpack their paper. It's on ArXiv if you want to follow along, arxiv.org, ETF 205 55.19914. We'll meticulously look at its core parts, the innovative methods they're using, and the really significant advancements it brings to LLM logical reasoning. And this isn't just a quick summary. For those of you really deep in AI reasoning, this is going to be a precise, thorough exploration. So let's start by digging into that foundational challenge. Why do these logical puzzles seem to trip up LLMs, and how does Enigmata actually respond? We sort of touched on it, how large reasoning models, LRMs like O1 and R1, have done amazing things in complex areas.
Yeah, there's success in math, STEM, coding. It's, like we said, largely down to that RLVR paradigm. It works so well because it depends on having those high-quality, verifiable prompts where you can objectively say, yes, this step is right, or no, that's wrong. That direct feedback lets the models learn these really complex reasoning chains, getting clear signals immediately. It's powerful for building those specific problem-solving skills.
But then, boom, you hit these logic puzzles and the performance just drops off. It feels really counterintuitive. Why would a model that can prove a complex math theorem stumble over, I don't know, a Sudoku or a Knights and Knaves problem? What's the core difference there?
That really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? The key difference seems to be in the nature of the task. They require purely logical reasoning skills rather than professional knowledge. That's the core distinction. See, with math or code, the LLM has access to this enormous amount of domain-specific data patterns, structures, solved examples it can learn from. But logic puzzles often demand abstract deduction, constraint satisfaction, multi-step inference, stuff that isn't directly tied to a massive knowledge base it can just look up. For us humans, these puzzles can feel easy and even obvious sometimes because they tap into our general capacity for abstract thought.
Right, it's more about the process than specific facts.
Exactly. For an LLM, the issue isn't a lack of computational power, it's more a lack of structured, systematic application of logic in a way that's domain agnostic. As the authors stress, previous work mainly focused on evaluating this, not building it. They didn't provide the diverse, scalable, controllable datasets or the right training methods for modern LLMs to really develop these skills. They specifically say current datasets lack diversity and scalability, limited puzzle types, little control over generation or difficulty. So a comprehensive trainable resource was missing, until now, arguably.
Okay, so if the old ways were lacking, Enigmata sounds like it's trying to be much more than just another benchmark. You described it as the first comprehensive suite tailored for improving LLMs with puzzle reasoning skills. What makes it holistic? What's the full package?
It's precisely that ecosystem thinking that makes it holistic. The researchers saw that you couldn't just have, say, a data set alone,
Yeah.
or just a benchmark, or just a training method. You really need all three working together, tightly integrated, forming a unified framework. So Enigmata provides these three core components. First, Enigmata data, which is this rich, specialized data set we'll get into. Second, Enigmata Eval, a rigorous benchmark built from that data. And third, Enigmata Model, which is their specific training recipe designed for these puzzles. Together, these create that unified, controllable framework for advancing logical reasoning in LLMs. It's about systematic improvement, not just measurement.
That makes a lot of sense, a complete toolkit. All right, let's dive into that first piece then. Enigmata data. The puzzle data set itself, it sounds like it's not just a random grab bag of brain teasers.
Oh, definitely not. It's really comprehensive. Enigmata data contains 36 task types spanning 7 broad categories. And each task type is specifically chosen to probe a distinct facet of logical reasoning. So it's targeting a wide range of skills, aiming for generalizable reasoning, not just narrow expertise. What's also key is that 30 of these tasks are auto-generated, which gives it huge scalability. The other 6 are drawn from existing well-known data sets to make sure there's variety and validated problems in there too.
The real kicker, though, it seems, is this generator verifier design. That sounds like the secret sauce, especially for RLVR. Can you break down how that works?
Absolutely. This is fundamental to its power and scalability for RLVR. Every single task in Enigmata data comes with this automated generator verifier pair. The generator part is designed to create unlimited examples with controllable difficulty. So researchers aren't stuck with a fixed set of puzzles. They can generate as much data as they need when they need it. And then, crucially, the verifier provides rule-based automatic evaluation. It instantly checks if a model's answer is right or wrong. Or even more powerfully, it can check the correctness of each step in the model's reasoning process, its chain of thought. This immediate objective feedback is exactly what provides the reward signal needed for the RLVR framework to learn effectively.
Wow, okay. Unlimited data generation and instant automated correctness checks. That sounds incredibly useful. What are the main advantages of having this generator verifier set up? It feels like it solves several problems at once.
It really does. It tackles some major limitations of older datasets head-on. First, and maybe the biggest one, is it enables scalable, self-verifying prompts. This is huge for complex reasoning because it directly supports long chain-of-thought training within RLVR. Models can get feedback step by step as they reason, which is vital for learning complex logic, where one wrong step can derail everything. Second, you get programmatic difficulty control. Researchers can mix puzzles and desired difficulty ratios. This allows for really fine-grained experiments on curriculum learning for RL. You start a model on easy stuff, then gradually ramp it up. This design makes that kind of precise control feasible.
That's powerful, being able to tailor the difficulty curve.
Exactly. And third, it allows for arbitrary sample counts.
Yeah.
The generators can emit any number of samples per task, which is critical for task balancing and cross-task generalization studies. You can make sure the model gets enough exposure to all the different puzzle types and difficulties without being limited by how much data someone manually labeled.
That level of control and scale is really impressive. Okay, let's walk through the 7 puzzle categories themselves. It really shows the breadth of logic they're trying to capture.
It's a really well thought out taxonomy. First up, crypto puzzles. These test cryptography understanding and pattern recognition. Examples are things like crypto KPA, known plaintext attack, and crypto KKA, known key attack. These challenge the model to decode messages, figure out cipher types from parameters, maybe even reverse encryption based on examples, really test inference about hidden rules.
Okay, crypto logic. Then you have arithmetic puzzles. Sounds simple, but I guess they can be quite tricky.
They can be. They focus on numerical reasoning, basic operations, but usually with specific constraints. Think of game 24 using 4 numbers to make 24. or count down hitting a target number using a given set. These test arithmetic under conditions, like making sure intermediate results are positive integers. It's about strategic number manipulation, not just calculation.
And for pure deduction, the classic stuff.
That's logic puzzles. Assessing deductive reasoning, inferring things from premises. Classic examples. Knights and knaves, figuring out who's lying and who's telling the truth. Zebra logic, those grid puzzles where you deduce who owns which pet, drinks what, etc., based on clues. The folio task mentioned in the paper is a good example too, given premises, is a conclusion, true, false, or unknown. It's all about applying logical rules strictly.
Right. Then grid puzzles, things like Sudoku. These seem visual for us, but how does an LLM handle that grid structure?
That's the interesting part. For an LLM, it's symbolic reasoning about constraints in a structured space. Examples include Sudoku, both 9x9 and 4x4, Star Battle, placing stars with rules, Binario, Magic Square, skyscraper puzzles using number clues around the edge, even full crosswords in something called symbolic hard. These test logic and sometimes spatial reasoning, like the skyscraper clues, depend on visibility along rows columns. It's manipulating symbols in a structured grid.
Okay, grids. What about connections and paths?
That brings us to graph puzzles. Reasoning about nodes, edges, paths, and graph structures. Examples here are Hamiltonian path or cycle-finding paths that visit every node exactly once. NL navigation, finding shortest routes in road networks described in natural language. And Bayes puzzles, finding a path through obstacles. These really test path-finding, network understanding, and connectivity logic.
And for planning and strategy.
That would be search puzzles. These involve exploring state spaces efficiently to find solutions under rules. Minesweeper is a great example, using number clues to deduce mine locations, mixing logic, and maybe some probability. Tic-tac-toe requires finding optimal moves, testing foresight. Others include Hattori, Kakarasu, Light Up, Slant. They all involve planning, search strategies, making good choices under constraints.
And finally, puzzles that involve steps or sequences.
Right, sequential puzzles. Understanding and predicting sequences of actions or changes over time. This includes classic sliding tile puzzles, 8 puzzle, 15 puzzle, 9 puzzle, 16 puzzle where you move tiles to reach a goal state. Also tasks like twiddle, rotating subgrids, car painting, minimizing color switches for a pattern, stack permutation, can a sequence be made with stack operations, and big bench symbolic, figuring out symbolic transformation rules from examples. These test the ability to follow, predict, and plan sequences of logical steps.
Wow, that is an incredibly diverse set. Crypto, arithmetic, logic, grids, graphs, search, sequences. It really feels like a comprehensive logic workout. For a human, some of these are fun diversions, but you can see how for an LLM they present distinct fundamental reasoning challenges. Okay, so how did they actually build this impressive Enigmata data? You mentioned a 3-phase pipeline.
Exactly. It wasn't just thrown together. Phase I was tasks, collection, and design. Here, they carefully curated and designed these 36 tasks. And a key point is that many tasks, like twiddle or skyscraper, inherently require multiple reasoning steps, often integrating different skills, spatial, combinatorial, numerical. Like we said, 30 are auto-generated for scale, 6 come from existing validated datasets.
And then the crucial generator and verifier development, that's where the automation comes in.
Precisely. Phase 2 is auto-generator and verifier development. This is where they built the custom generators for those 30 tasks, enabling that scalable data creation. And critically, all 36 tasks got corresponding auto-verifiers. These verifiers were then manually validated very carefully to make sure they accurately judge the model's output and provide correct rewards or penalties for the whole reasoning chain. That verification quality is absolutely essential for RLVR to work properly.
So it's not just about making data, but making data that provides reliable feedback. Got it. How did they get that fine-grained difficulty control?
That was phase 3, sliding difficulty control. For each puzzle type, they figured out the key variables that control how hard it is. Think grid size in Sudoku, or number of blank cells in Binario, or maybe the complexity of rules in a logic puzzle. They used these variables to parameterize the generators, allowing them to create easy, medium, and hard versions of the puzzles. And they didn't just guess, they validated this difficulty scaling using GPT-4o's pass at K performance. They checked if GPT-4o found the hard puzzles genuinely harder than the medium and medium harder than easy, using K values of 1, 10, and 100.
Ah, so they benchmarked the difficulty levels themselves using a powerful existing model.
Exactly. Pass at K just means if you generate K possible solutions, does at least one work. Testing with different Ks confirms the difficulty gradient. This validated programmatic control over difficulty is a huge asset for doing sophisticated curriculum learning experiments in RL.
Okay, so we have this incredibly rich, dynamic, difficulty-controlled data set, Enigmata data. The next obvious question is, how do you actually measure if a model is getting better? How do you evaluate progress? This brings us to Enigmata Evil, the benchmark component.
Right. Enigmata Evil's main job is to provide a rigorous and comprehensive evaluation of puzzle reasoning abilities, something that goes beyond the scope or integration of previous benchmarks. It's designed specifically to test the kinds of nuanced logical skills developed using the Enigmata suite, making sure any improvements seen are real and measurable.
And how did they build this benchmark? Is it just a random sample from the main data set?
No, it's much more systematic. They constructed it by carefully sampling from the larger Enigmata data pool. The goal was to get about 50 instances for each task at each difficulty level: easy, medium, and hard. This systematic approach ensures the benchmark is balanced and represents the full range of challenges in Enigmata. It stops models from just getting good at one small part.
And how many puzzle instances did that add up to in the end? Any issues hitting that target?
They ended up with 4,758 puzzle instances in the evaluation set. It wasn't quite 36 tasks, 3 difficulties, 50 instances, mainly because some tasks naturally have fewer variations at certain difficulties, or some still relied partly on manually collected data. But crucially, they use strict protocols to keep the training and evaluation sets completely separate. No data leakage. That's vital for a fair, unbiased assessment of how well the model generalizes.
Absolutely critical for any benchmark. So how does Enigmata Evil compare to other benchmarks out there? What unique value does it bring?
Well, what makes Enigmata stand out is how it balances several key things simultaneously. It has great diversity: 7 categories, 36 tasks, much broader than many single-focus benchmarks. It offers scalability thanks to the auto-generation, unlike manually curated sets that are hard to expand. It features built-in automatic verification, which is key not just for testing but also for RLVR training. And maybe most importantly, it's designed for trainability within the RLVR framework. It's built to improve models, not just rank them. This combination addresses gaps in older resources like CareBench, MPR, ZebraLogic, SearchBench, FCoreBench, which might be good at 1 or 2 of these things, but didn't offer the whole trainable ecosystem.
That makes sense. It's the whole package. Okay, that leads us naturally to the third component, Enigmata model, the actual training recipe. And it's not just simple fine-tuning, right? It's a structured 2-stage process. Why did they go that route?
Exactly. They realized that getting robust, generalizable logic skills needed a more systematic approach. This 2-stage process is designed to first build foundational reasoning patterns, then generalize them, while also tackling common issues like training instability or models becoming too specialized on just one type of puzzle. It's like a carefully designed curriculum for logical thinking.
Okay, let's break down stage 1, rejection, fine-tuning, or RFT. What's the thinking behind starting with this? What kind of data do they use here?
The rationale for RFT is pretty strategic. It's about establishing foundational reasoning patterns and also trying to counter training instability. Sometimes jumping straight into RL with a base model can be tricky. So RFT prepares the model with a solid base of high-quality, verified reasoning examples before the more dynamic RL phase kicks in. The data mix for RFT is interesting. It combines puzzle problems from Enigmata with high-quality R1 distilled mathematical dataset, examples from a resource called Light R1. They include math because it's known to bring out diverse reasoning patterns and helps with generalization. They also threw in data from the difficult ARC-AGI puzzle.
Why ARC-AGI specifically at this stage?
Good question. They noted it was particularly important for models that hadn't already undergone some form of RFT, likely to bootstrap that kind of abstract reasoning capability early on. For the puzzles themselves in RFT, they generated 8 possible solutions using DeepSeek R1 and then picked the single correct one for the fine-tuning. And they maintained a balanced 1.1 ratio between puzzles and mathematical problems during RFT. The idea is to build broad reasoning skills, leveraging both logic and math structures.
Okay, so RFT lays the foundation. Then comes stage 2, reinforcement learning with verifiable puzzles. This is where the interactive training happens. What algorithm are they using, and how do those automated verifiers really power this stage?
All right, stage 2 uses VCPPO. It's a variant of proximal policy optimization, PPO, which they say is specifically tailored for long chain of thought, CT generation. And this is where Enigmata Data's generator verifier design really shines. Remember, each of the 36 tasks has an automated verifier. This verifier instantly scores a response as correct or incorrect, providing that direct reward signal for the VCPPO updates. It creates a very efficient feedback loop. The generators to the 30 autogen tasks and the fixed pools phi for the other 6 give them huge flexibility. They can easily tweak the number of examples Norvada per task, control the difficulty mix, scale the dataset size. It all comes together as a fully automatic RL pipeline for puzzle reasoning, which really streamlines the whole improvement process.
Now, a big theme in AI is generalization. The paper mentions that just training on one type of puzzle leads to narrow skills. How does Enigmata try to foster broader, more transferable problem-solving abilities using multitask training?
That's absolutely critical. You don't want an AI that can only solve Sudoku but fails at logic grids. The goal is strong, transferable, problem-solving abilities. They explored two main ways to do this multitask training. The first is mixed training RL. This approach basically integrates multiple puzzle types simultaneously. It gives the model broad exposure to lots of different logical challenges all at once during the RL phase. The dataset for mixed training was carefully put together. The Enigmata training split, balanced across tasks difficulty, plus public ARC AGI 1 and 2 training sets, which they upsampled 8x, probably because ARC is so hard and data sparse, and AIM math problems from 1983-2023, upsampled 2x, likely to get enough complex math examples. Again, they kept that strategic 1.1 puzzle to mathematics ratio to encourage learning from both structured logic and abstract math reasoning side by side.
Okay, so mixed training is throwing everything in together. What's the second approach? Is it different?
Yes, the second method is multi-stage RL. This is more like a curriculum approach. The idea here is to deal with potential conflicts that might arise if you train on too many diverse skills at once, which can sometimes happen in mixed training. Instead, it builds skills incrementally. So phase 1 involves intense training on the really hard stuff first, like ARC, AGI 1 and 2, upsampled 8x, and AIM math problems, upsampled 1x, until the model gets good at those and performance stabilizes. Then in phase 2, they gradually introduce the Enigmata data puzzles, but crucially, they keep the phase 1 data in the mix to avoid forgetting those initial hard-won skills. This step-by-step build-then-expand method aims to help the model learn complex reasoning more effectively by not overwhelming it early on.
That makes sense, kind of like learning basics before tackling advanced topics. For our listeners deep in ML and data science, could you quickly touch on the implementation details, like learning rates, batch sizes, any key tweaks for PPO?
Sure. For the RFT stage, it was 2 epochs, max sequence length of 300 and 768 tokens, pretty long, which is important for those chain of thought examples, and a learning rate of 1E5. For the PPO stage, using VC PPO, they ran 425 steps, batch size 4096, mini batch 512. The learning rates were different for the actor and critic, 1E to 6 for the actor, the policy network, and 2B6 for the critic, the value network. Some key modifications they mentioned: removing the KL divergence constraint sometimes used in PPO. They also did value pre-training, likely to get a stable value estimate early on. And they used a decoupled GAE generalized advantage estimation with lambda values of 1.0 for the critic and 0.95 for the policy.
Can you briefly explain why decoupling GAE and those specific lambda values might be useful here?
Right, so GAE helps estimate how much better an action is compared to the average action. Decoupling it means you can use different settings for training the value function, critic, and the policy actor. Setting lit critic to 1.0 gives you an unbiased, full Monte Carlo return estimate for the value function, which can lead to more accurate value predictions, important for stability. Setting LOPLE to 0.95 introduces a bit of bias but reduces variance, often leading to faster and more stable policy updates, especially in complex environments with long action sequences like reasoning chains. It's a common trade-off. And importantly, they mentioned using VLLM for efficient decoding. That's a practical necessity for running these large-scale PPO experiments with potentially very long outputs without it taking forever.
Okay, great technical details there. So methodology laid out. Let's get to the results, the experiments, the setup, and, well, what they actually found. How did they really test if Enigmata worked? What benchmarks did they use?
They used a pretty demanding set of benchmarks to get a full picture. The main one was, of course, Enigmata Evol, their own in-domain benchmark to test the puzzle skills directly. For abstract reasoning, they used RC AGI 1 and RC AGI 2. Everyone knows these are incredibly tough for LLMs, really testing general intelligence. To check out-of-domain generalization to other puzzle types, they used Core Bench, which has puzzles from 5 categories, not explicitly in Enigmata. And crucially, to make sure they weren't hurting other skills, they tested on the AME 2024 Advanced Math Benchmark, a really comprehensive evaluation suite.
What was the model progression? You mentioned a base model and steps.
Right. They started with Qwen 2.532BB Instruct as the base model, already a capable model. After stage 1, rejection fine-tuning, they got the intermediate model, Qwen 2.532B RFT. Then after applying stage 2 using the mixed training RL approach for 370 steps, they arrived at their final best model, Qwen 2.532B Enigmata. This clearly shows the effect of each training stage.
So the moment of truth. How did Quen 2.532b Enigmata actually perform? Did it live up to the hype across these benchmarks?
The results are definitely compelling, quite groundbreaking in some areas. On Enigmata Evil, their main benchmark, the model scored 62.6%. Now, they note this was slightly under a proprietary model, a 4-mini high at 65.1%, but significantly it outperforms most public models in that 32B size class. So clear evidence the dataset and training work for in-domain puzzles, but the really striking result was on RCAGI. Their model consistently surpasses O3 mini high and O1, achieving 32.8% on RCAGI1 and 0.6% on RCAGI. It also outperformed Gemini 2.5 Pro on these benchmarks. That's a significant jump on famously hard abstract reasoning tasks.
Wow, beating established models on RCAGI is definitely noteworthy. What about generalizing to other puzzles, core bench, and did it forget its math skills?
That's where it gets even more interesting. They saw significant gains on out-of-domain benchmarks, like core bench. This is really important. It means the training didn't just make it good at Enigmata puzzles. It seems to have enhanced its general logical reasoning ability, allowing it to transfer skills to unseen puzzle types. And critically, it managed to preserve its math reasoning abilities. Performance on Aili 2024 was comparable to the models before the Enigmata training. So they added these logic skills without sacrificing complex mathematical capabilities. That shows a really well-balanced training strategy.
That's impressive gains in logic, generalization, and no loss in math. Let's drill down into the Enigmata Evil performance by category. Where did it excel, and where are the remaining tough spots for LLMs in pure logic?
The breakdown is revealing. The model showed exceptional strength in structured reasoning. It particularly excelled in crypto, 96.0%, arithmetic, 93.7%, and logic, 90.2% tasks. This suggests the training is really effective for rule-based reasoning, where constraints are clear, even if complex. It was also competitive in search tasks, 70.4%, beating most baselines, indicating good development of planning and exploration skills. However, there are definitely persistent challenges, especially in spatial and sequential tasks. Grid puzzles, 62.6%, graph puzzles, 54.0%, and particularly sequential puzzles, only 29.7%, were still harder. This pattern, strong on structured rules, weaker on spatial sequential, seems common across LLMs and points right at areas needing more research. How do we get models better at spatial manipulation and temporal reasoning?
Okay, now we get to something really surprising they found, what the paper calls a free lunch, this idea of generalization with scaling. The question was, could training on this knowledge orthogonal puzzle data actually help general reasoning in much larger models?
Right. And initially, with the Quen 2.532b model, they didn't see a huge benefit spilling over into, say, advanced math performance. It seemed like the puzzle training mostly helped with puzzles for that size model.
But they didn't stop there. They decided to go big.
Exactly. They repeated the experiment that scaled up significantly using Seed 1.5 thinking. This is a mixture of experts model, or MOE. It has 20 billion activated parameters, but around 200 billion total parameters. For listeners, MOE models use specialized subnetworks, or experts, and a router directs input to the relevant expert. It lets you build massive models while keeping computation somewhat manageable. And this is where the big surprise happened.
Okay, lay it on us. What was the surprising free lunch they found with a giant Seed 1.5 thinking model?
When they did the additional training with Enigmata on this already state-of-the-art reasoning model, creating Seed 1.5 thinking Enigmata, they found it generally improves performance on AIM 2024 plus 0.8, AIM 2025 plus 1.9, Beyond AIM plus 0.4, and GPQA Diamond plus 0.8. Think about that. Seed 1.5 thinking was already top tier at math and STEM reasoning. Adding synthetic puzzle data, which has no direct math or science knowledge, actually boosted its performance on these advanced knowledge-intensive tasks.
That is genuinely unexpected. Boosting advanced math scores with logic puzzles? What does that imply?
It's why they call it almost like a free lunch. This nice generalization suggests that training on diverse, abstract, logical puzzles might somehow distill or enhance fundamental reasoning mechanisms within the model. Mechanisms that are apparently transferable and beneficial even for complex domain-specific tasks like advanced math. It implies that building general reasoning isn't just about piling on more domain knowledge. Maybe cultivating pure logical thinking has broader benefits we didn't fully appreciate. It could really change how we think about training curricula for future large AI models, suggesting a mix of abstract logic might unlock latent potential.
That's a really provocative finding. Okay, to understand these results better, the paper includes some crucial ablation studies testing what happens when you change specific parts of the process. Let's start with training data size. Is more Enigmata data always better during that second RL stage?
Not necessarily, and this study really highlights the trade-offs. They varied the amount of Enigmata train data used in the second phase of multi-stage training. Figure 2 in the paper shows some interesting dynamics. First, even a small amount of Enigmata data added in Stage 2 gave a good boost to Enigmata evil performance, and it helped preserve the knowledge learned in Stage 1, like the ARC and AIM skills, and ODE performance. So a little bit helps a lot initially. Second, adding more Enigmata data did progressively improve the in-domain puzzle performance. Makes sense. But there was a tipping point. Using excessive Enigmata trained data leads to catastrophic forgetting of the Stage 1 skills and even slightly hurt ODE performance, so it's a balancing act. You need enough puzzle data to learn the logic, but not so much that the model forgets everything else it knew. Finding that sweet spot is key.
Right, the classic stability plasticity dilemma. What about controlling the difficulty of the training data? Did the mix of easy, medium, hard puzzles matter?
It definitely did. This was a test of their difficulty control mechanism. They compared a balanced ratio, 1.1.1 easy, not medium, hard, against a distribution focused more on medium difficulty, 2.6.2. They also compared their simple tag-based method to another technique called historical reward variation, HRV. Table 6 showed that the balanced difficulty ratio, 1.1.1, led to more robust, complex reasoning performance. Exposing the model to the full spectrum seems better than just focusing on the middle. And interestingly, their simple difficulty control method performed about the same as the more complex HRV on the in-domain Enigmata evil benchmark, but actually got superior results on ODE benchmarks. This suggests their straightforward programmatic difficulty control is not only effective but potentially better for generalization.
Another testament to the dataset design. Okay, let's compare the multitask training methods themselves. Mixed training RL versus multi-stage RL. Which one worked better for generalization?
They did a careful comparison, also looking at the role of supervised fine-tuning, SFT, by testing versions where SFT excluded certain tasks, SFT part, versus including all tasks, SFT all. Table 7 revealed some complementary strengths. Multi-stage RL seems to build deeper task-specific reasoning, suggesting the curriculum approach helps it master individual complex tasks better. Mixed training RL, by seeing everything at once, seems to improve generalization more broadly across different types of problems. Specifically, if you have limited pre-training data, multi-stage transfers better to unseen complex tasks like those in Enigmata or RCAGI, showing the benefit of building foundational skills first. But mixed training generalizes better to ODE tasks like core bench, suggesting the diverse exposure helps it learn more widely applicable reasoning strategies. The best approach might depend on your specific goals and training data.
Interesting trade-offs. And did they look different during training? Like, was one more stable than the other?
Yeah. Figure 4 looked at the training dynamics, plotting reward and response length over time. Both methods reach similar final rewards, and interestingly, reward tended to correlate positively with response length, suggesting models learn that thinking longer, more steps, often leads to better answers, a sort of test time scaling. But there was a difference in stability. Multi-stage RL showed more volatile response length, maybe indicating more fluctuation in its generation process. Mixed training RL had more consistent outputs with smoother length curves, suggesting greater stability, likely due to the constant, broad exposure to diverse tasks smoothing things out.
Okay, moving beyond the main results, the paper has some really sharp, in-depth analysis. Let's start with how supervised fine-tuning, SFT, actually impacts the RL training for these puzzles. Is SFT always necessary or helpful?
This is super important for practical model development, and Figure 3 in the paper really clarifies the role of SFT. It's quite nuanced. For simple tasks like the countdown arithmetic puzzle, they found SFT was not essential. All the methods with or without SFT got similar results. The base model and RL were enough. But for medium complexity tasks like Minesweeper, it got interesting. Mixed training without SFT really struggled. Multi-stage RL, however, still managed to learn effectively even without SFT, showing its robustness. But if the task was included in SFT, the SFT all case, both RL methods started much higher and quickly reached near perfect accuracy. This suggests for tasks with findable patterns, SFT gives a huge head start.
And what about the really tough puzzles? What role did SFT play there?
For the high-complexity tasks like Light Up, the difference was dramatic. Having comprehensive SFT, SFT all, combined with multi-stage RL dramatically outperforms everything else, especially on the harder versions. In fact, mixed training RL without relevant SFT basically fails on these hard tasks, making almost no progress. This is a strong message. For the toughest logical challenges, you likely need both the strong foundational knowledge from SFT, teaching the basic rules and patterns, and a structured learning approach like multi-stage RL to really succeed. They work together synergistically.
Fascinating. They also looked at the length of the model's reasoning output. Did longer reasoning always mean better reasoning?
Not necessarily, which was another interesting finding. Looking at ARC-AGI-1, Figure 5, they found that tasks where the model produced more concise reasoning showed significantly higher accuracy than those requiring longer reasoning chains. This suggests that, at least for some complex abstract problems, efficiency and succinctness in the thought process are actually linked to correctness. Maybe longer chains introduce more chances for errors or getting lost. It points to an opportunity for future work optimizing models not just for accuracy, but also for more efficient, focused reasoning, perhaps pruning unnecessary steps.
Now here's a finding that really jumped out at me, possibly the most counterintuitive one: the role of code generation in puzzle solving. We often think generating code might help structure thought, even if it's not executed, but they found code usage actually hurt performance. What's going on there?
Yeah, this one definitely challenges common assumptions. Table 8 shows it quite clearly. Code utilization in the model's output hindered puzzle task performance on both ARC-AGI-1 and Enigmata Evil. The numbers were stark. With code, ARC-AGI-1 accuracy was 12.5%, Enigmata Evil was 41.8%. Without code, those jumped to 35.7% and 63.6% respectively. The interpretation is quite profound. It suggests that current models fail to effectively use code without executing it for complex reasoning tasks. End quote. For us humans, writing pseudocode can clarify logic. But for these LLMs, it seems just generating the code doesn't guarantee the internal reasoning follows that logic correctly. Without an execution environment providing feedback on the code's validity, generating code might actually introduce noise, flawed logic paths, or distract the model, ultimately harming the reasoning process.
So the act of generating code isn't inherently helpful for the model's own reasoning unless it gets feedback on whether that code actually works or makes sense.
Precisely. It highlights a gap. If we want models to leverage code generation effectively during reasoning, they likely need either internal self-correction mechanisms tied to code logic, or, ideally, the ability to actually execute and verify the code they generate. Otherwise, it might just be adding complexity without benefit.
Wow. Okay, we have covered an immense amount of detail on Enigmata today. Let's try to wrap things up with a clear summary of its value and contributions.
Absolutely. So, Enigmata really emerges as a groundbreaking, comprehensive suite for boosting LLM puzzle reasoning, and it plugs right into the RLVR framework. Its key contributions are threefold. First, Enigmata data. This diverse data set of 36 tasks across 7 categories with scalable generation, automatic verification, and adjustable difficulty, a fantastic resource for training. Second, Enigmata Evil, a rigorous, well-constructed benchmark specifically for assessing these puzzle reasoning skills, vital for measuring progress. And third, Enigmata Model, the RLVR training recipe itself, showing superior performance, robust generalization, and that crucial preservation of other skills like math.
And don't forget that surprising free lunch finding.
Right, that unexpected benefit for larger models. Training the big Seed 1.5 Thinking Mo model with Enigmata's synthetic puzzle data actually led to extra benefits in other domains, such as math and STEM reasoning, improving even over its already state-of-the-art baseline. It points to this remarkable generalization effect that training pure logical thinking might enhance core reasoning capabilities to transfer widely.
So this is much more than just getting AI better at Sudoku. It feels like foundational research.
Exactly. The paper positions Enigmata as a solid foundation for the community to push forth the research on reasoning models. It provides the tools, the methods, and crucial insights. They do acknowledge limitations, of course, training mainly on one model, Qwen 2.532b, one RL algorithm, VCPPO, and the data being single-turn text, no visual puzzles yet. But they feel the approach is generalizable and could be integrated into broader training setups. It definitely lays groundwork for exciting future work.
So for you, our listener, the big takeaway here is that building truly robust general logical reasoning in LLMs isn't just about scale or domain data. It seems to be crucially about providing the right kind of diverse, controllable, verifiable curriculum like Enigmata offers. A curriculum that teaches models the process of thinking, deducing, navigating logical structures, not just pattern matching or recall.
Well said. And it leaves us with a really interesting thought to ponder. Could mastering these purely logical puzzles, the ones independent of specific world knowledge, be a critical stepping stone towards more general artificial intelligence? What are the full implications of that free lunch generalization? If abstract puzzle training can boost advanced math skills, What other latent capabilities might be unlocked by focusing on core logical competency? It suggests the path to AGI might involve cultivating these fundamental thinking skills in ways we're just beginning to understand.
Definitely food for thought. We encourage you to consider how these insights about curriculum design, verification, generalization, even the surprising role of code might apply to your own work in machine learning, data science, or mathematics. The future of AI reasoning might be shaped by these kinds of foundational advancements. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Enigmata. We'll catch you next time.